I'm Monica, a woman who thought she had life all figured out. 15 years of marriage, a steady routine, and a quiet sanctuary in the heart of a chaotic city. But beneath the surface of my perfectly framed world, a storm was brewing, a restless hunger I couldn't name. That is, until one night, when my husband Ethan texted me with a strange request that turned everything upside down. Dressed in satin and stilettos, I walked into my sacred haven, the old city library, expecting a simple surprise. Instead, I found myself stepping into a shadowy corner of desire and danger, teetering on the edge of a line I never imagined crossing. What did Ethan have planned in that dimly lit nook, and how far would I go before the night was over? Picture this. I'm standing on the edge of a crowded sidewalk, the city's heartbeat thumping through the soles of my shoes, as 1,000 voices weave into a chaotic symphony around me. I'm Monica, 41 years old, a woman who's carved out a life of order in this urban jungle. My world, on the surface, is a neatly framed portrait. Married for 15 years, a cozy apartment nestled among the towering giants of steel and glass, a routine that ticks like a well-oiled clock. But beneath that polished exterior, there's a quiet storm brewing, a restlessness I can't quite name. It's like I've been walking the same tightrope for years, balancing safety and something untamed. I live in a city that never sleeps. A sprawling maze of neon lights and shadowed alleys where secrets don't just hide, they thrive. It's a place where you can lose yourself if you're not careful, or maybe find something you didn't even know you were looking for. Amidst all this chaos, there's one constant that's always grounded me: the old city library. It's been my sanctuary since I was a kid, a cavern of whispered stories and the musty scent of aged paper. I can still feel the worn wooden floors underfoot, see the sunlight filtering through dusty windows, casting golden patterns on the shelves. It's where I escape when the world feels too loud, a reminder of simpler days when life didn't come with so many unspoken questions. Then there's Ethan, my husband. At 43, he's a force of nature, a man who could charm the stars out of the sky if he wanted to. His energy is magnetic, pulling people in with a grin that promises adventure. He's always chasing the next high, whether it's leaping out of a plane with nothing but a parachute, or sitting at a dimly lit table, betting more than just money in late-night poker games. Sometimes, it's subtler, the way he nudges at the edges of what's acceptable, testing limits just to see them bend. I've watched him flirt with danger in ways that make my heart race, not always from fear. Over the years, I've gotten used to his hunger for thrill, or at least I've told myself I have. It's been 15 years of marriage, after all. 15 years of me being the anchor to his storm, the voice of reason when his ideas get too wild. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't drawn to it, to him, to that edge he dances on so effortlessly. There's a part of me, buried deep, that's always wondered what it would feel like to step over that line with him, just once. Lately, though, something's shifted. A few nights ago, we were sitting on our balcony, the city sprawling out below us like a glittering puzzle. The air was thick with the kind of tension that comes after a long day, and Ethan had that look in his eyes, the one that means he's about to say something that could change everything. But before he could finish, my phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me back to the present. It was a Tuesday evening, just another ordinary night, or so I thought. The text from Ethan lit up my screen with a request that caught me off guard. He wanted me to meet him at the city library, of all places, just before it closed at 9 p.m. But that wasn't the strangest part. He insisted I wear the elegant black formal dress he'd bought me for our anniversary last year, the one I've only ever worn to upscale galas and fancy dinners. The fabric clings in all the right places, sophisticated yet daring. The kind of dress that turns heads and makes you feel like you're stepping into a different version of yourself. I stared at the message, my brow furrowing. The library? In that dress? It didn't add up. I called him right away, my voice laced with confusion as I asked what he was up to. His response came through the line with that familiar, playful edge, a tone that always makes my pulse quicken just a little. He dodged my questions with a chuckle, only hinting that he had a surprise planned, something I wouldn't see coming. "Just trust me, Monica," he said, his voice low and teasing, like he was already picturing my reaction. "Wear the dress. I'll see you there." I hesitated, my fingers tracing the edge of my phone. The library isn't exactly a place for satin and stilettos. It's a sanctuary of quiet, of worn pages and whispered thoughts, not a stage for whatever game Ethan was playing. But there was something in his insistence, a spark of mischief that tugged at that restless part of me, the part that's always been curious about where his wild ideas might lead. So, I gave in. I slipped into the dress, the cool fabric gliding over my skin like a secret promise. Standing in front of the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Elegant, bold, a woman who looked ready for a night of mystery rather than dusty bookshelves. My heart thumped a little faster as I grabbed my keys and headed out. The drive to the library felt surreal, the city lights blurring past my window in streaks of gold and crimson. Every stoplight seemed to stretch on forever, giving my mind too much space to wander. What was Ethan planning? Why the library, of all places? My fingers tightened on the steering wheel, a mix of anticipation and nerves coiling in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was going to be different, that I was driving towards something I couldn't quite grasp yet. When I finally pulled into the library's parking lot, the clock on my dashboard read 8:50 p.m. The building loomed ahead, an old brick structure with ivy creeping up its sides, its windows glowing faintly against the darkening sky. I stepped out, my heels clicking on the pavement, the night air cool against my bare shoulders. As I approached the heavy wooden doors of the library, they creaked open with a sound that echoed through the quiet night, like a whisper of something ancient stirring awake. The familiar scent of old books and polished wood washed over me as I stepped inside, my heels clicking softly against the worn floor. The main hall was nearly empty, just a few late-night stragglers hunched over tables, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of reading lamps. I scanned the room for Ethan, my heart still racing from the drive, from the mystery of it all. Then I saw him, standing near the reference desk, his silhouette sharp against the dim light. He was dressed in a dark suit, tailored and sleek, looking like he belonged in a boardroom or a clandestine meeting, not here among dusty tomes. His eyes caught mine, and that signature grin spread across his face, a mix of mischief and something deeper, something I couldn't quite read. He didn't say a word at first, just gestured for me to follow him with a subtle tilt of his head. My stomach twisted with a blend of curiosity and unease as I trailed behind him, the fabric of my dress swishing softly with each step. We moved past the main stacks, deeper into the library, where the air grew cooler and the light faded into a muted amber. The sounds of the outside world, the hum of the city, the murmur of other patrons, fell away, replaced by an almost oppressive silence. Ethan led me toward the farthest corner, a secluded nook I'd never ventured into before, where the historical archives were kept. The shelves here were taller, older, their wood darkened by time, and the air felt heavier, thick with the weight of forgotten stories. Long shadows stretched across the narrow aisles, cast by the faint glow of a single overhead bulb that flickered every few seconds. There were no cameras here, no curious eyes, just the eerie stillness and the occasional rustle of a page settling in the quiet. I glanced at Ethan, my voice barely above a whisper as I asked, "What are we doing here?" But he just gave me a cryptic smile, his eyes glinting with something I couldn't place. Before I could press further, movement caught my attention from the corner of my eye. Two figures stepped out from behind a towering bookshelf, their presence so sudden it made my breath hitch. The first was a man in his late 30s, wiry and tense, with a nervous energy that seemed to vibrate off him. He wore a library staff badge pinned to his plain shirt, and Ethan introduced him as Caleb, someone who'd worked here for years. The second man, Derek, was broader, in his early 40s, with a quiet intensity that made the small space feel even smaller. His gaze was steady, almost piercing, as he stood just a step behind Caleb. Ethan's voice was casual, almost too casual, as he explained he'd met them earlier that week and that they'd agreed to help with an experiment. My mind stumbled over the word, experiment? What kind of experiment could possibly involve two strangers in the depths of a library at closing time? My heart started to pound, a drumbeat in my chest, as I tried to piece together what was happening. I opened my mouth to ask, to demand an explanation, but before I could get the words out, Ethan moved with a deliberate calm. He guided me forward, positioning me between Caleb and Derek, their presence suddenly overwhelming in the tight space. Then he stepped back, settling onto a nearby poof, his posture relaxed, but his eyes locked on mine with an intensity that pinned me in place. His voice was low, smooth, as he said, "She's okay with it. She wants it." The words hit me like a shockwave, reverberating through my mind as the pieces snapped together with horrifying clarity. This wasn't about books or research or some innocent surprise. Ethan had orchestrated something far beyond anything I'd ever imagined. A boundary-pushing moment that teetered on the edge of forbidden. My breath caught in my throat, my body frozen as I realized the nature of this so-called experiment. A shared encounter, an exploration of lines I'd never dreamed of crossing. A storm of emotions crashed over me, each one fighting for dominance. My heart is a wild thing, hammering against my ribs as I stand there, caught between Caleb and Derek in this shadowy corner of the library's archive section. The air feels heavier now, almost suffocating, charged with a tension that seems to hum in the silence. I'm hyper-aware of every detail around me, as if my senses have sharpened to a razor's edge. The old wooden table just a few steps away draws my eye. Its surface is scarred and weathered, etched with decades of use, scratches and ink stains telling stories of late-night research and hurried notes. It's a sturdy, unassuming piece, yet right now, it feels like the center of this charged moment, a silent witness to whatever is unfolding. Surrounding us are towering shelves, packed tight with unread volumes, their spines faded to ghostly shades of brown and green, the gold lettering of their titles long since worn to illegibility. The shelves loom like ancient sentinels, guarding secrets older than any of us, their shadows stretching long and dark across the narrow aisle. The faint, musty scent of aged paper and dust clings to every breath I take, grounding me even as my mind spins. Caleb shifts closer, his presence subtle, but undeniable. His hand brushes against my arm, a slow, deliberate motion that sends a shiver racing up my spine. The warmth of his touch cuts through the cool air of the library, igniting something I can't name, something that makes my breath hitch. On my other side, Derek leans in just enough that I can feel the heat of his breath against my neck, a whisper of sensation that makes my skin prickle. It's quiet, almost reverent, as if they're both mindful of the sanctity of this place, this hallowed ground of whispered words and quiet contemplation. Yet there's an undercurrent of boldness in their nearness, a silent promise of boundaries being tested. My formal black dress, the one Ethan picked out, feels suddenly too tight, too restrictive, the satin fabric rustling softly with every small movement I make. It's as if the dress itself is complicit, clinging to me in a way that amplifies every sensation, every brush of air, every fleeting touch. I glance across the small space, my eyes finding Ethan's. He's still seated on that poof, a few feet away, his phone in hand, the faint glow of the screen illuminating his face as he records this moment. But there's no trace of jealousy in his expression, no anger or doubt. Instead, his gaze is one of pure fascination, like a scientist watching an experiment unfold, observing a breakthrough he's been waiting years to witness. That look, it unnerves me, strips me bare in a way that's far more intimate than the physical closeness of Caleb and Derek. It's as if he sees right through me, to the storm of emotions I'm wrestling with, to the part of me that's always been curious about the edge, about letting go. My chest tightens, a mix of vulnerability and exposure washing over me. I feel like I'm on display, every thought and feeling laid out for scrutiny. And yet, there's a strange power in it too. A strength in surrendering control, in allowing myself to be seen, to be part of something so far outside my carefully ordered life. Somewhere in the library, beyond these shelves, a clock ticks faintly, each second a quiet reminder that time is slipping away. Closing hour is approaching, 9 p.m., just minutes from now, and with it, the risk of someone wandering into this secluded nook, of footsteps echoing down the aisle and shattering this fragile, charged bubble we've created. The thought sends a thrill through me, sharp and electric, mingling with the heat of Derek's breath, the lingering warmth of Caleb's touch. What if someone hears a rustle, a whisper, and comes looking? What if the library's silence is broken by the sound of discovery? That possibility dances at the edge of my mind, heightening everything, making my pulse race even faster. I've spent so much of my life avoiding risks, clinging to safety, but right now, that danger feels like a spark, igniting something wild and untamed within me. My hands find the edge of the old wooden table, fingers curling around the rough, splintered edge of the table, the wood cool and grounding beneath my trembling fingertips. My breath is shallow, catching in my throat as I feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. The library, my sanctuary of silence and order, feels like it's holding its breath too. The stillness so profound, it's almost tangible. Yet inside me, there's a tempest raging, a whirlwind of anticipation, fear, and something raw and uncharted. My heart thunders in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears like a drum roll leading to an inevitable crescendo. I'm standing on the precipice of something I can't turn back from, and as I ease myself onto the wooden table, the creak of the old frame beneath me sounds like a whisper of consent, a quiet agreement to whatever is about to unfold. Caleb and Derek move with a kind of unspoken harmony, their presence enveloping me as they draw closer. There's a quiet intensity in their actions, a careful dance of nearness that feels both reverent and daring in this sacred space. Caleb's hand finds the small of my back, a steady warmth that sends a jolt through me, while Derek's fingers graze my shoulder, light as a feather but heavy with intent. Every touch is like a spark, igniting my senses in ways I've never allowed myself to feel before. My skin prickles with awareness, every nerve alight as the cool satin of my dress shifts against me, amplifying the heat of their closeness. The air between us hums with a charged energy, a silent conversation of boundaries being nudged, tested, and crossed. It's as if we're weaving a story of our own among these ancient tomes, a chapter that no one else will ever read, but that will forever be etched into the fabric of this moment. The dim lamplight flickers above us, casting trembling shadows across the towering shelves that surround this hidden nook. The light dances over the faded spines of forgotten books, making the scene feel almost otherworldly, like I've stepped into the pages of some forbidden tale, a narrative of secrets and unspoken desires. My gaze flickers to Ethan, just beyond the edge of this intimate circle. His phone is still in hand, steady as ever, capturing every fleeting expression, every subtle shift. His eyes, though, they're what unsettle me most. They burn with something I can't quite decipher, a mix of fascination and something deeper, something that feels like pride or perhaps a darker curiosity. It's as if he's seeing a version of me I've never dared to acknowledge, and that look strips me bare in a way that's more intense than any physical touch. My breath hitches as the moment intensifies, the world narrowing to the creak of the table beneath me, the warmth of Caleb and Derek's nearness, and the storm of emotions swirling within. My heart feels like it might burst from my chest, each beat a reminder of how far I've stepped outside my carefully constructed life. There's a rush of liberation in it, a sense of breaking free from the chains of routine and expectation, as if I'm rewriting my own narrative right here among these dusty pages. But there's guilt too, sharp and biting, gnawing at the edges of my mind. Am I betraying something? Myself, my values, the life I've built? Or am I finally claiming a piece of myself I've kept locked away for too long? The conflict tears at me, even as my body responds to the unspoken rhythm of this encounter. Caught in a dance of surrender and discovery, time seems to stretch, each second expanding into an eternity, as if the library itself is suspending reality for us. The faint tick of that distant clock is drowned out by the sound of my own ragged breathing, by the subtle rustle of fabric and the soft groans of the table bearing witness to our actions. It's a moment that feels both fleeting and endless, a paradox of urgency and timelessness. And then, as quickly as it began, it's over. A sudden stillness descends, heavier than the silence that preceded it, pressing down on us like a tangible weight. I'm left breathless, my chest heaving as I try to anchor myself back to reality. My hands smooth the fabric of my dress, the satin cool against my trembling fingers, as I try to steady myself in the aftermath of what just transpired. The air in the archive section feels different now, heavier somehow, like it's absorbed the weight of our actions. My mind is a whirlwind, thoughts spinning too fast to grasp, as I slide off the old wooden table, its creaks echoing in the silence like a final note in a song I didn't know I was playing. Caleb and Derek step back, their presence no longer pressing, but the memory of their closeness lingers on my skin, a ghost of sensation I can't shake. Ethan lowers his phone, the glow of the screen fading as he slips it into his pocket, his gaze still intense but softer now, like he's seeing me anew. There's no need for words in this moment. The silence speaks volumes, wrapping around us like a shroud as we gather ourselves. We leave the archive section without a sound, the four of us moving through the narrow aisles like shadows slipping through the night. The library is officially closed now, the last of the patrons long gone, and the stillness is almost suffocating as we make our way toward a side exit. Caleb, with his staff key in hand, unlocks the door, the metallic click sounding louder than it should in the quiet. He holds it open for us, his expression unreadable, a mix of professionalism and something unspoken as he nods in farewell. Derek follows him out, offering only a brief glance over his shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the moment we shared, before they both disappear into the darkness beyond the door. The warm night breeze hits my skin as Ethan and I step outside, a stark contrast to the stuffy, dust-laden air of the library. It's like a slap of reality, sharp and sudden, pulling me back to the world I know, yet I feel different, changed in a way I can't yet name. Relief washes over me, mingling with a heavy weight that sits in my chest, a burden of questions and emotions I'm not ready to unpack. Ethan and I stand alone on the sidewalk, the city humming around us with the distant rumble of traffic and the flicker of neon lights casting jagged reflections on the pavement. The night feels alive, pulsing with a rhythm that mirrors the chaos in my mind. I turn to him, my voice low, almost a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter whatever fragile understanding we've reached. "We cross the line," I say, the words tasting bitter and true on my tongue. He looks at me, his expression softening, those sharp edges of his usual intensity melting into something tender yet piercing. "And you erased it," he replies, his voice steady, carrying a weight that anchors me even as it unsettles me. Those words, they cut deep, encapsulating everything. Our marriage, built on years of balance and unspoken compromises, his insatiable need for risk, always pushing at the edges of what's safe, and my willingness, however reluctant at first, to follow him into the unknown, to step into the shadows with him. They're a confession and a challenge, a mirror held up to the choices I've made tonight, reflecting a version of myself I'm still trying to understand. I stand there, the city's heartbeat vibrating through me, and I feel the weight of his words settle into my bones. There's no regret in me, not really, though I search for it, expecting to find it lurking in the corners of my mind. What happened in that library wasn't easy, wasn't something I ever imagined myself doing, but it was a story I chose to write, a hidden chapter tucked between the lines of my carefully ordered life. I've spent so long crafting a narrative of control, of safety, that I forgot what it felt like to let go, to let the ink spill and create something raw and unscripted. Tonight, I did that. I stepped into a moment that was as much about discovery as it was about transgression, and though the guilt still gnaws at me, it's overshadowed by a strange sense of ownership, of agency. I wasn't just carried along by Ethan's storm. I walked into it with my eyes open, and there's power in that, a quiet strength I didn't know I had. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.